Welcome, Delphi friends, to another episode of How It Works with Holger. Today, just a very quick one, but quick doesn't mean it's not very important for your daily developer tasks. And this is something I see day to day, more often than I'd love to, and it has to do with date time values and how we store them in databases. To give you one statement, don't use now. We have learned in Delphi, starting in Delphi 1, that we use now to get the current date and the current time. That is no longer a good thing to do, especially considering that we work with servers and these servers transmit their information to clients, and that is not a good way to store your values inside of databases. And as we as humans don't like to be told what we're supposed to do or not to do in particular, let me rephrase it. Please start using NowUTC. This is a rather new function in Delphi 11, I think it was introduced, Delphi 11, Delphi 12. Obviously, it was available through the RTL earlier than this, but in Delphi 11, it became much easier to access this. I'll give you an example after introducing what the problem is all about, because you might be like, what's going to be the problem? I have been using Now for all these years and it's always been fine. I don't use my software on different computers, so what's the problem here? I'll show you. So with regards to dates and time zones in Delphi, you don't have to dig deep to get this right, because Delphi makes it excruciatingly easy to use this. Let's start with an example, and we will use now, as we've been doing for years. So assume Holger creates a T-Day time in Florida. That's on the East Coast of the United States. And I store that value inside of a database. So the value that now returns and that I will store in the database is going to be July 20th, 2024 at 7 p.m. or 1900 hours. So now, an hour later, Bruno in Belgium opens the same database and reads the date value out of the database. And this date value is July 20th, 2024 at 7 p.m. at 1900 hours. And that's just wrong, because from Bruno's perspective, that record or that value was created on July 21st, 2024 at 1 a.m. in the morning, or 0100 hours. Because Florida is 6 hours behind Belgium. So if it is 7 p.m. or 1900 hours here, it is actually 1 o'clock in the morning for Bruno. And that's what the database should reflect, right? Because if you do, in particular, like calculations, how much time you spend on a certain task, you're now getting what I am getting at. Let's assume you store a now value in a database and switch time zones in between. The differential of the time is not going to be correct. You could argue that I have to store the time zone as well, and not only the value. That makes things way too complicated if you look at the next example. The difference when using NowUTC is pretty much easy to implement as well. So it is still July 20th, 2024 at 7 p.m. And the UTC time is going to be July 20th, 2024 at 11 p.m., 2300 hours. And that is actually the value that gets stored into the database. So under the agreement that you store UTC time in your database, Bruno can then open the database in Belgium 1 hour later, and he's going to see that the record or whatever was created on July 21st at 1 a.m. Because his database is able to say, okay, it's UTC, I need to use the UTC offset for Belgium, and voila, that is the time that it was created, considering what the time would have been in Belgium. And that's correct, and that's what the behavior should be. So in a nutshell, you always want to store values as UTC time, and when you display the time, convert the time zone to the local system. And this is in particular important when transferring data from a server to a client. Assume you have a web application and your database server has to return UTC time. And then the client, when it's being presented to the user, has to look at the settings of the browser and convert it to local time. TMS Web Core, for example, has excellent TDateTime support, offering these things through classes just like Delphi does in the VCL. Finally, let's look how you do all of this in code. It's gotten really, really easy. I just created a new VCL project, didn't do anything, I left all the defaults. Simply double click on the form that gets you to the onCreate constructor of the form, and what we need is a new unit, system.dateUtils. That's the unit that we're going to use. So in order to access the date time, we have it very easy now. We can say lnow is tDateTime.now. This would be equivalent to using now, but we can also do lNowUTC is tDateTime.nowUTC. And with that, you have two date time values, and I can show them on the form. Let's just create a memo field real quick. So really quick and dirty, memo 1, and let's do memo 1 lines add lnow to string, and memo 1 lines add lnow UTC dot to string. And these should be two different values. There we go. We have two different numerical values because toString uses the double value when working with dates. So the correct way to do this, instead of using toString, is datetime toString, like this. You can also specify a format. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to go here, paste. Then we don't get the internal representation, but a nice human readable value. And this is what I just said. Right now, it is 7:14 and the UTC time is 11:14. So at this point, you have the NowUTC value that you're supposed to store in the database. But you might ask yourself, how do I convert this UTC time back to the time it actually is locally on the system? And for that, Delphi has the TTimeZone.Local class or class method or class property called local, which returns the time zone. If you press dot again, you can get the UTC offset, but you can also say to local time. And in there, you basically say lnow UTC. And again, we're going to add that to the memo with the tDate time string, like so. And then we should see that the time is once again human readable, but it is the local time again. So if we take out lnow, let's see what happens. And there we go. This is the UTC time. And here again is my local time. And I think this is rather amazing how easy it is to use these UTC values with Delphi. And if you would run this application with TTimeZone.Local and enter my value that I calculated on a system that's in a different time zone, Delphi would do the appropriate thing and return the tDate time value adjusted for the time zone that that client is running on. And these classes, just like this, are also available in TMS Web Core so that you can transfer UTC time from your Xdata servers, from other web services, and then display them in the local time zone in your web applications. So please start using NowUTC, forget about now, and display the time like it should be on the local system using TTimeZone.Local. Thanks for watching How It Works with Holger. Please subscribe for more videos like this. Give us a thumbs up if you liked it. And also, comments are always welcome. Thank you and take care.